Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a horror thriller movie called The Well. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens as American art restoration expert Lisa Gray is on a bus headed to the suburbs of Lazio. Shortly afterwards, the vehicle stops and a group of 3 people, including 2 women and a man, climb aboard. They look like tourists and immediately start a conversation with Lisa. It turns out the 2 women, Tracy and Madison, are American biologists, and the man, Tony, is their Italian guide. They are headed to the outskirts of a village named Sambuchi to study the local fauna. Lisa introduces herself and reveals that she too is headed to the same village. A few hours later, it becomes nighttime and the group arrives at their destination. The biologists then reveal that they are going to set up camp in the nearby forest. Lisa, on the other hand, has a hotel reservation not far off from the bus stop. They promise to meet each other a few days later before heading their separate ways. The next morning, Lisa is waiting at the bus stop outside her hotel when a handsome local man approaches her. He informs her that she will not find any buses in this area and asks where she is headed. Lisa replies that she is going to the Malvezzi mansion, and the young man offers to drop her there. Although she is slightly unnerved, Lisa accepts the offer, and the duo heads to the location on foot. On the way, the young man introduces himself as Marcus, and Lisa shares her name as well. They soon reach the Malvezzi mansion, which is a grand old building with great historical importance. Marcus escorts her to the front door, and before leaving, mentions that he runs a pub nearby. He invites her to visit whenever she has free time, and then graciously takes his leave. Once she is inside the mansion, Lisa is warmly greeted by its owner, Mrs. Emma Fosca Malvezzi. She is a single mother who looks extremely young and fit despite her age. Emma quickly leads the American upstairs, where the painting that needs restoration is kept. Turns out it was damaged in a fire, and currently its surface is covered with a thick black charred residue. Lisa carefully assesses the painting and remarks that the whole process could require about a month, but upon hearing this, Emma suddenly changes her tone. She intimidatingly says that the restoration must be completed within 2 weeks. Slightly taken aback, Lisa announces that she will immediately start working and even requests to sleep in the room with the painting. Emma agrees to the proposition and leaves her to begin the work. That night, Italian guide Tony sets up a microphone in the woods near the village of Sambuchi. He then heads back to his tent and calmly listens to the plethora of noises being transmitted through the microphone. Everything seems to be normal at first, until he hears a strange screeching noise. He is afraid that his microphone might have been damaged and decides to investigate the matter. However, barely a few seconds later, we hear him shouting in a distressed voice. Startled by the screams, the 2 American biologists immediately wake up in their tent. Madison leaves Tracy alone and goes into the woods to search for their guide. She soon discovers Tony's blood-stained cap not far off from their camp. Following this, Madison returns to the tent and insists that they need to go to the police. But before she can explain further, someone suddenly grabs her neck and yanks her away. Tracy, who is still confused by what's happening, is now all alone and terrified. She cautiously tries to sneak out of the tent, but someone knocks her out with a strike to the head. The scene shifts to Madison, who wakes up behind bars in a dimly lit cell. She notices a man named Rocco throwing up in another cell nearby. As she looks around, she also sees Tracy and Tony in similar cells. In fact, the whole place looks like a circular prison, at the center of which is a well. Back at the mansion, Lisa is having dinner with Emma and her teenage daughter, Julia. The American tries to strike up a conversation with Julia and asks what grade she studies in, but the latter abruptly drops her fork and leaves the table without a word. Emma apologizes for the behavior and explains that Julia doesn't attend school because she suffers from a personality disorder. She is 13 years old, but refuses to act according to her age. Hearing this, Lisa thanks Emma for the dinner and excuses herself for the evening. Elsewhere, Aruda, a muscular figure with extremely pale skin, slowly enters the area with the cells. He begins observing each prisoner before stumbling forward towards the well in the center. Unable to control his anger, Tony begins yelling at Aruda and demands to be let out, but the macho man remains silent and lowers a steel bucket into the well before retrieving it. Tony continues to shout various profanities until Aruda eventually gets pissed off. He approaches Tony's cell and stabs him in the back back with a butcher's knife. The women watch in horror as the giant drags Tony's limp body to the well and throws him in. At the mansion, Lisa is slowly making progress with the restoration work of the painting. She is extremely engrossed in her work when suddenly she uncovers a strange, eerie, cat-like face hidden beneath the layers of damage. Lisa is intrigued by it and attempts to scrape away the thick black char from the face, but suddenly a piercing scream echoes around the room, startling her. She recoils back in horror and accidentally cuts her finger with her tool. Worried, Lisa cautiously removes her glove, but her blood splashes onto the painting. The scene then cuts to the cell, where Rocco is attempting to escape using a file from a nail cutter, but he is so anxious that the file slips and falls to the gutter underneath. Rocco then turns to Madison and reveals that there's a passage beneath his cell, but he has now lost his tool. He also promises to bring backup if they help him escape. Madison thus throws her Swiss Army knife towards his cell, and Rocco manages to grab it. That night, while Lisa is sleeping, a naked, ghastly figure enters the room and lies down next to her. It begins touching her sensually, moving its hand to her neck, but it then strangles Lisa, causing her to awaken in a panic. The figure's face is extremely terrifying, and Lisa begins to choke to her death. This is when she jolts back to reality and wakes up in a chair. Her eyes quickly fall on the painting, which is right in front of her. To her utter horror, one of the figures in the painting looks exactly similar to the entity that she saw in her dream. Lisa slowly approaches the painting when suddenly Julia arrives in the room. The teenager tells her to run away and warns that the painting is cursed. Before leaving, Julia eerily says that if Lisa restores the painting, she will be haunted forever. Things are going even worse for the prisoners in the circular jail. Aruda arrives once more and drops the metal bucket into the well. A lean, ashy pair of arms emerge from the shadows and grab the bucket in the bottom of the well. Whatever creature is living there slits its forearm and drips a large amount of its blood in the bucket. Aruda then pulls the vessel back up and sets it aside before heading to Rocco's cell. Madison realizes that if Rocco dies, no one will be able to get away from this hellhole. In an act of valiant sacrifice, she starts taunting the behemoth. The plan works, and Aruda starts approaching her cell, but then he brutally peels the skin off Madison's face before throwing her into the well. Solid plan, Madison. Meanwhile, we finally get to see the creature that lurks in the darkness of the well. It is a disfigured, ugly, pale ghost-like entity which feeds on Madison's intestines. Back at the mansion, a disturbed Lisa has a conversation with Emma about the painting. She unwittingly reveals that Julia had told her some rather unpleasant stories about the painting, but Emma brushes off the claims, claiming that Julia regularly makes up strange fantasy stories in her mind. She also urges Lisa to focus on her work, reminding her that according to the contract, any delays in delivery will result in heavy penalties. With the mounting pressure, Lisa takes some antidepressants before going back to work. She is about to get started when suddenly she hears someone crying nearby. She cautiously goes to investigate, only to be horrified by the sight of Madison, severely injured and crying in a bathtub. Overwhelmed with fear, Lisa runs out of the room and collides with Emma. This shatters the illusion, and Lisa notices that there is no one else in the bathroom. Emma is extremely angered by her frequent breakdown and warns her that if the work isn't completed on time, she will regret it. Meanwhile, in the prison, Rocco has finally managed to open the grate that is covering the entrance to the gutter. He is ecstatic and attempts to enter it head first, but suddenly, something horrifying happens. A lean, pale pair of arms grab his neck and begin peeling the skin off his face. The ghost-like entity then kills him instantly before devouring his flesh. Elsewhere, while Lisa is tirelessly working to finish the painting, she is visited once more by Julia. The teenager reveals that the painting was created in 1493 and depicts her mother performing a human sacrifice to summon a monstrous being named Goran. Once the monster appeared, Emma trapped it and ever since has been using its blood to stay young. She adds that if the red moon shines on the painting before midnight, the curse will renew for another 500 years. To prove her point, Julia then reveals details about the last 3 victims captured: 2 girls, 1 black and 1 with blonde hair, and a guy. The description matches exactly with the 3 tourists that Lisa had met on the bus. Julia then leads the American to the location where the prisoners are being held. As they approach, they see Aruda unlocking a door and descending into the basement. But right then, Emma calls for her daughter, so the teenager reluctantly leaves. Determined to help the captives, Lisa arms herself with an iron rod and cautiously heads downstairs. She slips through a door and follows Aruda to the basement. Lisa then watches on as the behemoth enters the cell room, but accidentally knocks over metal rods, which makes a lot of noise. Fortunately, she hides beneath a nearby table before Aruda arrives to investigate. Lisa then catches a horrifying glimpse of severed hands and legs, crawling with maggots from her hiding spot. Aruda, on the other hand, assumes the noise was caused by rats, like any good NPC, and heads back into the room. Shortly afterwards, Tracy freezes in terror as Aruda approaches and unlocks her cell. She bravely strikes him and tries to escape from there. However, she stumbles on the stairs and ends up losing consciousness. After a while, when Tracy wakes up, she finds Aruda standing over her with a red-hot knife. He presses it against her face, burning her skin without any remorse. Then he lifts Tracy up and slowly lowers her into the well. At this critical moment, Lisa uses the iron rod to smack Aruda's head from behind. The behemoth falls down and gets temporarily knocked out. Lisa uses this opportunity to pull Tracy up from the well, and the two make a run for it. Meanwhile, Aruda slowly regains consciousness and surveys the scene. He notices the open passage in one of the cells, along with Rocco's half-devoured body. To his utter horror, he realizes that the demon who was captured in the bottom of the well is now free. His fears are confirmed when he turns around and sees the ghost-like pale figure standing right in front of him. It is revealed that this is the demon Goran that Emma had imprisoned centuries ago. The monster then brutally attacks and feeds on Aruda's flesh. The scene shifts to Tracy and Lisa, who have managed to reach outside the mansion. They are relieved to find Marcus there, but in a shocking turn, he shoots Tracy with his bow. He then threatens Lisa to enter the room with the painting. Inside, she finds several people gathered, including Emma and the ugly creature that had tried to choke Lisa in her nightmare. They are holding candles and waiting for midnight to arrive. Emma then instructs Lisa to finish the painting before the clock strikes 12. Reluctantly, Lisa resumes her work, and as she does so, Emma's image is revealed on the canvas. Marcus's face is also painted right next to Emma's, and they start chanting. Everything looks doomed, when suddenly Julia bursts into the room with a candle. She orders everyone to step back, or she will set the painting on fire. The teenager then goes on a rant and accuses Emma of trapping her in a little girl's body for centuries. Her words expectedly enrage Emma, and she commands Marcus to kill her. But before he can act, Lisa hurls the cleaning solvent onto Marcus's face. Upon seeing this, Emma lets out a furious scream and shoots Lisa with an arrow. Just as Marcus moves to finish them off, moonlight floods the room. It touches everyone, transforming them into their true aged forms. One by one, they wither and curl up into balls of dried flesh. Lisa and Julia watch on in horror as Emma rapidly ages, crumbles into ashes, and vanishes. Then, Julia also begins to change, and we see that she is actually much older than the teenage body she was captured in. She bids farewell to Lisa before disintegrating into ash. Now all alone, Lisa, who has had an arrow in her abdomen, stumbles towards the door and tries to leave. Her exit is soon blocked by Goran, who heads straight for her. Lisa quickly slams the door shut, but the demon begins furiously pounding on it. Desperate, Lisa approaches the painting and starts scrubbing away the section containing the chant. Just as Goran breaks through the door, she begins reciting the chant from the painting. Surprisingly, this causes the demon to let out a deafening scream. My name is Goran! Before collapsing on the floor. The scene then shifts to 30 years later, as Lisa is seen in the mansion, still as young as she was when she first came to Sambuki. Downstairs, we see a team of doctors and Goran, still alive but bound tightly to a bed. Lisa approaches them and coldly instructs the head doctor to increase the production. The latter obliges and injects a syringe into Goran's throat, provoking it to let out a blood-curdling scream. It is obvious that Lisa used the chant to trap Goran and use its blood to gain eternal youth.